Thank you, Rachel. This meeting is now being recorded. Okay, so thanks for coming to this first PSTSC Chairs meeting for a while. It's great to see people. What will happen in the next hour or a little bit less? I'll say a couple of words of introduction. And the main event today will be a presentation from Melissa Graham about the community engagement team. This was a change of speaker at very short notice, as the previous speakers were unable to present this week. So before we do anything else, I'd like to express thanks to Melissa for being able and willing to present with less than a week's notice. So thank you, Melissa. Item number 3 will be I'll say a couple of words about topics for the next meetings in this series. You'll see from the pre-populated content that we have a fair few topics that people have expressed an interest in for the PSTSC meetings throughout the rest of the year. And finally, if anybody has anything else they wish to discuss at this meeting that hasn't come up in any of our communications, there's an item at the end of the live notes. If you want to just type in that item, anything you have a burning issue need to discuss at this meeting, we'll get to it if we have time today, or if not, we can communicate afterwards. Okay, before we begin, I hand over to Melissa. Are there any questions anybody has at this time before we get going? All right, in that case, let's move on through the agenda. So Melissa's slides are available at the link in the live notes here. Before with no further ado, Melissa, are you ready to present?
Yes.
Awesome.
I'm going to share my screen.
Leanne asked for the link to the live notes. I'll paste it back in the chat. Leanne, there it is.
Okay, you should be seeing my screen. You should be seeing a title slide right now. Correct?
Great.
Yep.
Yes, great. Okay. Yeah, so thanks, Will, for inviting me to come here and speak to you all today. This is going to be mostly directed at the science collaboration chairs, not so much at the PST. And sort of in light of the fact that there was a pretty short turnaround time, I'm approaching this more as sort of an impromptu discussion and not so much as a information dump about everything CET has been doing. But I am going to start with like a bit of an overview. And so one of the things I always like to do when talking about community engagement is just first define all of the communities that we're trying to engage to make sure we're using the same words. So the first one is the Rubin community. And we use that really broadly just to refer to anyone, anywhere interacting with the Rubin Observatory and its data products and services in any capacity. A subset of that we call the science community. That's the subset of the full community that's doing, in particular, scientific analyses with the LSSD data products and services. And then, of course, we have the science collaboration members, who are another subset of the science community who have joined one of the LSSD science collaborations. Also, we have the community of Rubin Observatory staff. So that's the subset of the entire Rubin community who work for Rubin Observatory. Many of them are also active in the science community and are science collaboration members. And then down here at the bottom here, I specify the data rights holders. So those are individuals with the right to access, analyze, and publish work on LSSD proprietary data. So in particular, I try to use the term Rubin community very generally, and it includes non-data rights holders that might be using the alert stream or post-proprietary data in particular. So it kind of defines all of the communities that the community engagement team is looking to engage. And so what we're trying to do is maximize scientific productivity and excellence in the use of Rubin LSSD data products and services. That's sort of our overall goal and mission of the community engagement team within Rubin. And of course, this is a goal that's shared with the LSSD Science Collaboration. So we have a lot of overlap in the kinds of things that both teams are are trying to do. I wanted to list here all of the current and the near future members of the community engagement team, just to point out that we all have Rubin-related scientific expertise, and in many cases, relevant experience here. So among the current members, we have about half of our current team also has some other connection to Rubin, either they've been on the data management team or they're now working for verification and validation team. And then everybody sort of has some Rubin-related science experience as well. We're growing. Our team is going to about double in size over the next year as well. So lots of hiring going on lately. I want to make the point also that the community engagement team is an operations only team. There is no construction counterpart for the community engagement team. If anything, sort of my work with the data management system science team kind of involved a lot of community engagement and educating people about the future data products and that kind of thing. But strictly speaking, community engagement's an operations only team. We are situated in the Rubin System Performance Department. So what you're looking at here at the left is the full operations org chart. In the middle, I've just pulled out a zoom in on the System Performance Department. Leanne Guy is the Associate Director of System Performance, and community engagement sits under System Performance because the scientific results produced by the community are a key success metric of the Rubin Observatory system. So like the system is not performing if the community is not doing their science on it. So that's sort of where we sit within Rubin operations and why. We have a full, well, maybe I shouldn't say full, we have a draft model for community engagement that includes most of our core components. You can find it in RTN 006. RTN is the Rubin Tech Note series of documentation from Rubin Observatory, and that rtn-006.lsst.io should work as a link, as a URL to access that document. There are sort of three main components of the community engagement model. The first is to facilitate access to an analysis of LSST data products and services. So that is everything covered by documentation, tutorials, having open forums and workshops, making sure all the resources are open and available to everyone, making sure we're having prompt and clear communication of changes to the Rubin system. So that's sort of the first component. The second component is the coordination of expertise within the Rubin community. And so this is mostly focused on issue resolution. When issues come up, problems with the data sets, we want to fully understand them and resolve them. And we want to make sure we're using everyone's expertise to do that. So the community engagement team sort of is in there, trying to do things like triaging user questions, figuring out which internal Rubin teams might need to be involved in a solution, and that kind of thing, and enabling the broader community to also participate in solving problems that arise. The third component is to sustain a self-supporting and collaborative community to enable us to do the first two components. Really, we need the third one. And so we know that support should be scalable, equitable, and inclusive. Everyone should have access and be able to ask their questions and get answers in a timely way. And then all entry points to Rubin Science should be clearly identified. So we want lots of on-ramps to Rubin Science, if you will. We want people to be able to find them and use them and feel included in doing their science. So it's kind of a very general sweeping view of our overall model for community engagement. Ways that we're implementing this model practically right now, we have a couple of things in progress, and there's a couple of more things coming up in the future. So Data Preview 0 is one of the places where we're implementing all three components of this model actively right now. If you're a DP0 delegate, you kind of are familiar with our tutorials, our workshops, engagement on the community forum, Q&A, all that kind of stuff is being implemented now. And sort of the other initiatives that we have going on includes helping with the Rubin project and community workshop, looking at DEI strategies, and in particular hiring a postdoc to focus on DEI related work, who is cross-appointed with community engagement and also the Noir Lab CSDC, that's the Community Science and Data Center. And we've established the users community. The users committee, that's something that's done in conjunction with the SAC, with the SAC. So they are now up and running as well. And then looking towards the future, we need to establish some user acceptance testing for the Rubin Science platform. We want to formalize the liaisons to the science collaborations, which we'll talk about more later today, and also look towards establishing protocols and processes for citizen science and user-generated data products. That's all coming in the future. So just a note about community engagement and the science collaborations. I wanted to sort of say these 4 things to acknowledge the LSSD science collaborations are already a community of very engaged scientists who actively welcome and support each other. The science collaborations will continue to be the first place many scientists turn to for scientific support and engagement. At every opportunity, the community engagement team does recommend joining one or more of the science collaborations as the best way to get involved in preparing for LSST science. And particularly, we try to make the point that they're a great way to learn more. We do see a lot of people who are sort of coming to us or coming to Data Preview 0 and they're like, well, I haven't had time to do much work yet. And oh, I need to learn stuff. And we really try to direct them to joining the science collaborations and making the point that you don't have to know a bunch of stuff in advance of joining the science collaborations, that they're a great venue for learning and networking. And the 4th point is that most of the activities that I mentioned so far are sort of more directed and more designed for individual scientists, and the science collaborations as well have lots of activities and initiatives that are directed at individual scientists learning. But most of the things I want to talk to the science collaboration chairs about today are more how the community engagement team can better support science collaborations as a whole, not just like individual members and the things that we provide for them. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today. So I have 6 specific points where I'm going to say a couple of words and then sort of open the floor for discussion and feedback from the science collaboration chairs. And I put them in this order, so sort of approximately order of urgency. So we'll see how far through we get. And then I also want to make sure that I leave time for open Q&A. And then it sounds like you have a couple other things on your agenda for today as well. So let's get started. And I want to say some really specific things about Data Preview 0. So if you'll remember, for the first phase of Data Preview 0, which started last year, we had 300 Rubin Science Platform accounts to allocate, and 30 were reserved for the science collaborations to allocate however they wanted, to give out to their members, whatever they decided to do. What they decided to do is allocate those 30 accounts to science collaboration members who agreed to be a science collaboration rep to a new friend, where that new friend was a Data Preview 0 delegate who was new to Rubin, maybe hadn't joined a science collaboration yet, but had overlapping interests and was interested in the science collaboration. So the community engagement team administered this program for the science collaborations, and about 10 of those 30 accounts were allocated. We were ultimately unable to match all interested delegates who were new to Rubin because we didn't have quite enough volunteer science collaboration representatives. I've talked with Will a little bit about this New Friends program, and we've decided we'd like to survey the New Friends participants. And then, so the community engagement team will survey the 20 or so participants that we had in this program and report back to the science collaborations coordinator about whether we should continue this program, try something different. We're not really sure yet. So the first thing that I wanted to open the floor to discussion was, did anyone participate in this program, hear anything about it, or have any general feedback or ideas about this New Friends program that was run in the context of Data Preview 0?
Melissa, do you want discussion on that item now, or? Okay.
Yeah, as we go.
I'm looking out for hands raised. I don't think I see any yet.
I think we can just sort of wait 30 seconds. You can think about it. And then if there's no one's got anything to say about this, then we'll just sort of move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I think that works.
Yeah.
I see a hand up from Rach.
So this could just be my preconceptions, but I have had the experience in the past where people are quite daunted in volunteering to have expertise in something when they are joining the data preview themselves with a view to learning. So even if they do have probably more expertise or familiarity with Rubin that would be valuable to pass on, they don't necessarily think they have and therefore don't volunteer. So I think you have kind of a chicken and egg situation rather than a lack of volunteers.
Yeah, that was that's a good point. So I think we did try to make it clear that the SC reps, their expertise was just like they're in a science collaboration and they sort of have seen them work on the inside. So the bar was pretty low, but it can be really hard to explain how low bars are sometimes.
Yeah.
I think maybe, sorry about my voice. Melissa and I had worked quite a bit on the name. We wanted to make it to make sure that it didn't sound patronizing, so we stood away from anything that sounded like mentoring, etc. But perhaps we landed on something that was vague enough that it was hard to understand what you were volunteering for.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might have contributed to the confusion.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. I remember now we did go back and forth on the name quite a bit. Yeah.
And I don't think any of the other options, I do still see all the negative sides of all the other options. So I don't think we made a bad choice. But
I see Meg's hand is up.
I'm just wondering if this is a result of people are busy, they're super busy, and now you added on, please mentor somebody else that's not a direct person under them in a pandemic, while people are also still virtually teaching, not virtually teaching, switching back and forth, etc. If you're seeing the extent to people have time to do things unpaid, not paid for. Everyone has a desire, people think about doing things, but if you were a new faculty member or a postdoc and you knew you were in the job market and you're going to be writing applications, you might go, I don't have time for this. So I'm just wondering if we're seeing the extent of the community sort of signing up for things that, might require, maybe it sounds like it's gonna, maybe in reality it's a little bit of time, but people expect that it's going to be more than, an hour a week, and that's not doable in the world we kind of live in when we're not paying for it. Just a thought, if that's maybe something contributing to it.
No, it's almost certainly contributes to it. And I know when we did survey the delegates, always the number one thing is, oh my gosh, I don't have time to do this, but it sounds so cool and I would have really liked to, but there wasn't enough time. So I'm sure that's sort of a factor everywhere all the time. It's very understandable.
Is it possible there are any materials that could be created to alleviate both the time problem and the point Rachel brought up about folks not feeling sufficiently expert to be mentors? I don't know, like some sort of checklist of what the mentor is expected to do, what the friend is expected to do.
Yeah, I think that part we did try to explain to the science collaboration reps, to really just sort of on hand to be the point of contact for the new people. So the new people have, for all those weird random little questions that they just don't know who to ask. That's your person. You ask that person. Yeah.
Right. So in that context, then the sort of new friends participants would be more just like the point of contact into the particular science collaboration from new people.
Yeah, exactly. The science collaborations reps were there just to sort of ask questions. We had them sort of tag up at least once so that our new to Rubin person who was new to Rubin and experiencing data preview 0 the first time, had someone talk to them from one of the science collaborations for at least a little while. And then after that, they'd, have a question. So we could make that actually really much clearer, that the concept of this program is just to have a 30-minute one-on-one and then someone to ask questions to after, and just to really make that low bar really clear.
Before we move on, I see Tom has a couple of chat messages with some experience in relevant issues here.
Yeah, I wanted to type it into chat so that Melissa could actually see what Hermine, one of our new friends volunteers, said. I think the intent was actually pretty clear. So, I haven't heard any following feedback from Hermine about, whether she was able to mentor people effectively or successfully, but I think the intent of the program was pretty clear. So.
Okay, cool. This is all very good and useful feedback. Thank you. I think our default is to shuffle up our matches, try it again. So we can take some of this feedback into when we restart this program, which we won't do right away. Give things a bit of time to get our delegates started and get everyone access and get going before we try to do this again. And we'll report back on that survey to see if the new friends themselves had any feedback. And so now I do want to talk a little bit about these accounts that we have for the science collaborations to allocate to anyone. They could stay attached to the new friends program. They could be given out for other reasons. So I have some example reasons, other means for allocating these accounts that the science collaborations might want to consider, like additional students for some of your members, allocated them to people who forgot to apply, make sure every science collaboration chair has an account. These are all just ideas. And for data preview 0.2, we now have a total of 600 RSP accounts that we can allocate. And at the moment, it looks like we'll be a little bit undersubscribed anyway. So I think having these sort of reserved accounts for the science collaborations, it's there's not the same pressure to allocate them as we had in DP 0.1. So just wanted to open the floor for other ideas, thoughts about science collaborations allocating these accounts themselves to people.
This is Tom. So one possible benefit, though, it's also a bit of a burden to the chairs or whoever handles the allocation would be it might provide a mechanism for getting feedback kind of regularly, like maybe every 3 months or 6 months. We revisit those allocations and ask if they should be released and reallocated to somebody else, or just get feedback on how it was going. So that could be one motivation for doing something like that.
So, right.
Sorry,
So then in
a
that,
comment in the chat.
sorry. So in that case, we would have to re-announce within the collaboration.
I have no idea how this would work, but that could be a possibility. Yeah.
Okay.
I think I will make the comment too that having an RSP account it's a simple matter of I add a GitHub ID to a certain team in a certain GitHub organization. People can relinquish their accounts by withdrawing from that particular GitHub organization. We are not at the moment, doing the extra work of going in and removing that user's stuff from the Rubin Science platform and fully shutting down their account. So I think we no longer think about it as people have accounts for a short amount of time and then they relinquish those accounts and then somebody else gets one. I think we don't really want to get into that mode. I think if the science collaborations needed more accounts and they're like, oh man, we have, these other 10 members who would really like to go in and do some things, I think that's something we could accommodate. So I think no need to worry so much about relinquishing accounts to have other people try it. We could accommodate additional users at the scales that you're probably thinking about. And this doesn't have to be decided now. So it's just something we can talk about later. Oh, and also, so I do see in the chat as well, because there are no simulated solar system data products, but there are no simulated lots of things. There's no AGN. There's no near field galaxies like local volume stuff. There's only type 1a supernova. I mean, the data set itself is really directed for cosmology. So there's also not all kinds of variable stars, no low surface brightness. So there's most of the science collaborations. I mean, we're lucky to be able to use this DC2 data that Desk created, but of course it doesn't serve many of the science collaboration science goals. But the point of Data Preview Zero is much more about use of the Rubin science platform. How do you query, how do you query and plot for millions of data, for millions of objects at once? How do you use the TAP service? How do you use the Butler? It's much more focused on like the services and the tools than it is on the data. So I would say solar system should go right ahead and have a say in how these accounts are allocated, from my perspective anyway, that consider how DP0 could serve all of the Rubin community. Yeah.
Melissa, can you clarify, please, the method by which DP opportunities are communicated to the collaborations? Is it on us to communicate this to members, or is this going out anyway through system-wide emails or community?
Yeah, we use the forum and then the email lists. So that's the science mailing list and the science collaborations mailing list. Those are sort of top three. And then we try to get the word out through other various emailing lists and stuff like that. Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to skip ahead to the next topic, which is science collaboration visibility within the context of Data Preview Zero. And improving it, and specifically in how we can improve it and make a stronger connection and make the science collaborations more visible to our Data Preview Zero delegates. So as a little bit of background, for Data Preview 0.1, for the first phase and over the first year, we kind of tried to have this idea of having working groups. And we wanted these really to be grassroots formation of working groups that are delegate led. So it's not the community engagement team saying, oh, in DP0, we're going to have, this STARS working group and this weak lensing working group and this and this. There's very much more people come to the delegate assemblies, they learn a bit about, a certain service aspect of the RSP. And then we have breakout sessions where people suggest, oh, I want to learn more about weak lensing or large scale structure or whatever. And then that becomes a breakout room and we sort of call them working groups. It's just sort of very casual. People come together to work on the same kind of science. So within this model of this grassroots formation of working groups, we kind of thought that the science collaborations, that people would sort of start to form around science collaborations, or that science collaboration members would be like, well, I'm here from TVS, so I want to have like a TVS breakout. And that sort of did happen. TVS, for example, does have a Data Preview Zero task force, and sometimes the members would be there, and then there would be a variability working group in a breakout session. And the other connection with the science collaborations through this sort of informal working group setup was that I think a few of the delegates got really interested in the truth data, and then they reached out to Desk in search of additional truth data. So there was a nice sort of connection there, and we saw some delegates go and talk to Desk people. But overall, I'd like to find ways to have greater visibility for the science collaborations in the context of Data Preview Zero. This is where I wanted to acknowledge that the simulation is cosmological, but the point of Data Preview Zero is to learn about the data product formats and how to query the databases and that kind of thing. So one of the ways we can do this is, so we have these biweekly delegate assemblies every other Friday. And we generally have open calls for presenters after we run a few months of sort of really focused tutorials where we're making sure people are learning all the basic skills. We're using the Rubin Science platform, and we have sort of more of an open format where people can come and give presentations. So that might be one option, to start having science collaborations come as very visible representatives of the science collaborations, and then speaking to delegates. We could help people make little DP0 based tutorials that represent the science collaboration science as best as it could be, for example, or not at all. It could just be a science collaboration member coming and speaking about the work their science collaboration does, within the context of DP0, but maybe you're talking more about what you might want to do for DP1 instead, since this, process will be extended. So kind of wanted to leave it there as open for discussion on what people might like to see or do in terms of raising science collaboration visibility in DP0 activities.
Melissa, speaking for TVS, we do have a task force on DP0, and I think they would do a really great job, and that would be very helpful to the science collaborations and to the DP0 enterprise.
Yeah, and I think that the TVS's DP0 task force, several of the people who are associated with that did come and give presentations about the work that they'd been doing on Data Preview 0. And they participated a lot in some of the working groups, like especially the source injection working group, I think was mostly motivated. But I think what we didn't do was and this is like me, I didn't do a great job of really highlighting that work as being science collaboration related. So that's something I want to try to highlight more, if I'm making sense there.
Yeah, that sounds great. And yeah, shout out to that group. They're really active and they're really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it might be helpful for the community to realize that, part of the reason why they can be so successful is because they're working together within the context of a science collaboration, which gives them share resources, share knowledge, and a place to actually work together.
Okay, and that's fine if there's no further thoughts on this. And I noticed Will reminded me that we only have 11 minutes left for this presentation. So it's okay. Okay, good. I see some comments going on in the chat. Okay. The next most important thing that I wanted to raise was how the community engagement team can better support grant proposals by science collaboration members. So last year, the science collaborations requested a DOI'd document that was citable, that described exactly what Rubin Observatory will and will not create in terms of data products and software to help with grant proposals. So that exists. It's called the Rubin Data Products Abridged. It's got a DOI. It's available and discoverable in multiple formats online. This work in particular was done by me more related to my DM system science team work, because it was really focused on data management's plans. So that's really more of a construction thing. But supporting grant proposals is supporting LSST science. And so this type of activity could also fall under community engagement. And so just looking forwards towards November coming this year, is there anything we could do or change about this one DOI thing that we have, or any other ways that community engagement can help support grant proposals?
Do we have any information, anecdotal or otherwise, that that people actually use this link and it was actually useful for grant proposals?
Michael, I all the proposals that I was on used it, if that's of any help, which were a few. and I have shared it with several people had pinged me and asked for it. The thing that we don't have, and we continue to not to have, is an actual evidence-based assessment of how many proposals go in that are Rubin, even what does it mean for a proposal to be about Rubin, right? So how core does Rubin have to be for somebody to move to actually use this statement and feel compelled to do that? And how many of those get approved and how many get rejected? We get anecdotal information about rejections primarily. And we do know that there are very few Rubin grants around the community. And the reason why we don't have that is because we have several times thought about should we do a census, but it's tricky and people don't necessarily want to talk about the financial, where they receive their financial support from, what their strategy is and all of that.
Okay, thanks.
I think Rachel's hand is up.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on this and to pose the question of how we can leverage getting funding for the science collaborations from the private foundations. We've had limited success so far in achieving that, and it would be great to capitalize on that. Having said that, I don't know exactly how this team could necessarily support that, except possibly to give some sort of formal endorsement to future proposals.
I'm not sure community engagement can or should be endorsing proposals. I think that's definitely out of our scope, I would say, and very tricky to do, because then you have to know to ask for that endorsement, and that's really, really difficult. So I'm gonna say probably not that road, but definitely things about producing documentation, or providing tutorials, or simple like infographics that describe the data products. That kind of stuff, it definitely does fall under CE. Yeah.
Quick comment, and by supporting proposals doesn't necessarily just mean supporting the science piece of the proposal either. In terms of the breadth of what you mean, to help people think this through after the meeting, in terms of the breadth of what you mean by supporting grant proposals.
Yes, true. Yes. So I think what you're referring to, something we talked about the other day, longer term, more and more proposals will have to have broader impacts associated with them. And so community engagement would also be open to helping with the broader impacts part, especially since support for scientists who are doing citizen science programs with LSST data, that falls under community engagement as well. So we'll have Brian Nord is joining our team as the citizen science expert. And so that aspect of supporting your broader impacts as well is something that we could help with. I think, Will, is that what you're?
That's exactly what I was referring to, yeah.
Okay, so we can leave this topic as something that might come up, or just to keep in your mind if you need stuff and think we can help as you put together your grants later this year. We're here for that. Let me just decide how we should actually spend the last couple of minutes.
Melissa, I can give you until 2:52. There haven't been any other business suggestions yet.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm just going to skip the PCW, and I want to mention the liaison program in particular, because this is something that's written right into the Federation charter, so that the science collaborations have the right to these liaisons. And as we move from construction to operation, the liaison program starts to fall under community engagement. And so what our plan is to draft like a guidelines for Rubin science collaboration liaisons to really formalize this program, clarify what the expectations are for liaisons. So we're going to be putting that together and then circulating it to the science collaboration chairs for input, because we want to, write something that that everyone is happy with. To formalize that process, the process also for identifying the liaisons is something that will be described in this document as well. And so this is something that we'll be writing together sort of over the, more like in the fall. I think there's not a very urgent need, but I did want to put it on here as something that's coming, and also open up the floor in case there's any comments or questions or concerns about the liaison program in general and its existence going forwards.
So actually, Melissa, do you plan on starting the liaison program as Operation Start? Is that, I think we were vague in the Federation document about sort of the details of how we would go from DM liaisons to other liaisons.
Yeah, the timeline is pretty open, but once we sort of have a guidelines written down about how we want to formalize this program and go forward with it, I don't think there's much of a point in waiting until operations to use a more formalized version of the liaison program. I think it's sort of over the next year or so, we probably want to get this formalized, and it won't even necessarily be a switch because it might be mostly the same people in most cases. So I think timeline is quite open, and no need to really wait until operations starts, is my impression. But also in this case, if the science collaborations were like, whoa, please don't make any changes for a little while, we're quite happy, then we would back burner this for a while, and we could do it wait until the start of operations. Okay, sounds like there's no burning concerns about the liaison program. So we'll at least get started on this draft. We'll circulate it, see how it goes. Okay. In that case, just with the last couple of minutes, I will pop back up and talk a little bit about the PCW because it is coming up imminently in August. So as I think you already know this because Will already told you, as usual, the Wednesday morning plenary will be for the science collaborations. There is already, the abstract is up in the website for the PCW. This is it here. 20 minutes of this plenary, the last 20 minutes will be graduate student poster pitches. So it'll be about 20 students or less doing like the single slide little summaries that Pat Burchat runs. So that leaves with an introduction from Will and then the time divided up for all of the science collaborations. That's about 7 minutes for each science collaboration to speak. So about 6 minutes plus 1 minute for, the switch or whatever. The slide deck sort of already exists, and I kind of filled it in with about 3 slides per science collaboration with prompts right in the slide deck so that sort of each collaboration can sort of touch on the same topics. Those proposed prompts are, a general introduction to the core science that you do, a little bit about which Rubin data products and tools you'll most heavily use, and what kind of things you're building that sort of attach onto those for your science. And then 1 slide that's the challenges and uncertainties that you're mainly facing, and then a little bit about like a final statement about joining the science collaboration. The plenaries will be live streamed, and so we do expect lots of people to be watching. So it's I thought each science collaboration will probably want to end with a here's how you join us kind of thing. But this is just proposed to really, this is the Science Collaborations time to do with whatever they want to do. So I just wanted to open up for discussions and comments about this plenary in general, the one coming in August specifically. Yeah.
We are running just a tiny bit short on time, so if people do have burning comments, please add them to the live notes document if they occur to you immediately after this meeting, for example.
I have a question, but it's not about this. Is that okay? Stepping away from the PCW.
If it can be quick, sure.
Oh no, if you were closing, that's fine.
Why don't you go ahead and ask it, and we can always discuss it in the notes afterwards if needed.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why we thought like the idea of having a CET catch up with the science collaboration arose in the call we had about commissioning, right? So I'm wondering if there are any overlapping responsibilities in if there is access to the data, helping the community working with commissioning data, if the CET team has any responsibilities in that.
Oh yeah, looking forward to data preview 1. Absolutely. Most of the same types of things that we're doing now for data preview 0 happen again for data preview 1. So short answer is yes. And we're getting a lot of practice now with DP0, if that answers your question. Oh, and Leanne's hand is up. But you're muted still. There we go. Okay.
I just add something to that, just to clarify. There's commissioning, and then there's sort of the context of I think you're all familiar with the announcement of opportunity that went out to engage the community as part of commissioning. But Melissa's talking about DP1. So what's going? I'm not sure actually, Fed, which one of these you're referring to. If you're strictly referring to DP1 and helping the community to work with DP1, which will be a reprocessing of all the commissioning data taken with ComCam. And then DP2 will be a reprocessing of all the commissioning data taken to that point that is of science quality. So we're not going to include things like out of focus images, for example, that were part of integration testing. So that's certainly within the remit of the community engagement team. However, what's not is to work directly with the commissioning team as they do their day-to-day analysis of the data. And then the community members who work as part of that, this announcement opportunity that Keith Bechtel has been shepherding. So if you're referring to that sort of thing, that's not part of the community engagement team's work. Like everyone on the project, the community engagement team will certainly make use of commissioning to inform themselves and train themselves and make sure that they are ready to go and help the community once DP1 comes. But the way data is processed during commissioning between the sort of day-to-day processing, run an imaging survey at night or run a spectroscopic survey overnight, take some data, look at it the next day, analyze the images, work out what's good, work out what's bad, what do we change, plan for the next night, and then the community's involvement through this announcement of opportunity in that work, that's all managed by the commissioning team, and the community engagement team won't be assisting the community in that work. But once we get to the end of commissioning, take all the data that's been processed, that has been taken of science quality, do a consistent reprocessing with the science pipelines, and then release that as part of DP1, the community engagement team will be fully on board to work with the community in that context.
Great, thank you. That's just a clarification that I wanted to understand better.
Thanks.
Rach, you have a very quick comment?
Yes, Leanne, you commented that there was an announcement of opportunity. I don't believe I've seen that. Or is that forthcoming?
No, it's out and been and gone, and it's happened. So you probably have, but you might not know what I'm referring to. I'd be very surprised if you didn't know about this. Just very briefly, the in-kind program allows the international community to make scientific contributions and get involved scientifically in return for data rights. There was some concern that the US and Chilean communities were going to miss out on getting involved in some of the
okay, yes. Sorry, I'm joining the dots now.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And that allowed the American and Chilean communities to get involved and make proposals to get involved and have early access to the data.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that?
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
I would have been very surprised if you hadn't heard of it.
Okay, we're at about 4 minutes before the hour, so I'm going to invoke the chair's prerogative and draw a line under that discussion. Thank you very much, Melissa. That was fantastic, particularly under such short notice. So let's all thank Melissa for doing a really great job there at the last minute. To try to make sure people can finish the meeting before we actually do hit the hour, just a quick comment for the topics for the future PST SC meetings. You'll see item 3 at the end of the live notes document lists the PST SC meeting topics that the 3 organisers are aware of, myself, Fed and Steve. Just to repeat what it says in the notes there, if you have any topics you would like us to schedule for these meetings, you can contact me directly, or you can use the Google form that's linked in the document there. Leanne did have a comment about one of those topic items. We are running a little low on time. Leanne, are you okay typing your comment into the document?
Sure, I can, but I actually just be 30 seconds. 2 of your points,
Sure.
plan one and commissioning, we plan to have sessions at the PCW on these, and September's basically a few minutes after the PCW. So it was more just a suggestion, a point that there's not going to be anything different in a PST Science Collaborations chair presentation a few weeks after the PCW on those topics.
Okay, that's useful to know.
Also, LSST at Europe is planning to have a detailed year 1 early science session, and that's in October. So you've got an August and an October. So
that's useful to know. Thank you. That's a useful clarification. Brilliant.
that was the only point I wanted to make.
Cool. Thank you very much. That was indeed 30 seconds. Thanks. Okay, so we are about to hit the hour. So thank you all very much for coming. Before I do let everybody go, we should be back on the regular LSST Zoom meeting, the next one of these that we have. And we will try and announce this both by Slack and by email, so folks know with some advance notice and have the right link. And with that, I think I'm going to call the meeting to a close. If you have any burning comments you wish to make, please go ahead and make them into the shared live notes document at the end. There's a section for that. Any other business? And with that, let's thank Rach for taking notes, thank Melissa again, and thank all of you for participating. And we will announce before too long the next one of these meetings. So thank you all very much.
All right. Thank you, Will.
I will stop the recording.